Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Arizona Dreams. I'm joined by Mrs. Arizona Dreams again, and today we are going to talk about HOAs and everything you need to know about them as far as the Phoenix Valley goes. Let's first ask the question, what is an HOA? Well, an HOA stands for Homeowners Association, and about half of the Phoenix Valley has an HOA in force on those residents. Now, interestingly enough, from our experience in our recent house shopping, pretty much every place, at least in the East Valley, had an HOA. Some things to clarify for you, because back east, Great Lakes, Midwest, whatever, typically HOA is applied to townhomes and condominiums. And that's still the case here, but it's also applied to single-family homes.
Yeah, because when I went house hunting in Ohio, I never encountered, for myself, I never encountered an HOA. Did you, when you bought your house?
Not in Ohio or Michigan.
Yeah,
neither spot.
When we lived there, it was just not a thing. But when we came here, wow! I mean, every rental home we looked at or lived in, every place we looked at, and all the houses that we looked at were 2000 and over when they were built. So, and what we found when we were looking was that most of the new builds, you're not going to get away with not having an HOA.
That's true.
The older homes, they were more likely to not have that in the community.
Yep.
So if you're looking for a fairly new build, and you know, it's funny, we see in the comments when people are like, yeah, when I get there, I'm definitely not moving into an HOA neighborhood. And it's like, you may not have a choice, you know, really depending on what house you pick. It's just really hard to find a house that doesn't have an HOA attached to it.
Unless it's an older neighborhood.
Unless it's an older neighborhood. Yeah.
And I would say pre-2000 is probably pretty accurate. There are some in the East Valley, which is where we were shopping, that do not have HOAs. And usually when you're looking at Realtor, Zillow, or your MLS, it'll actually call it out, because it's kind of a big deal now. That it'll say, usually in caps, no HOA. So what is a homeowners association? It is a board for the homeowners, and they're going to give you a standard set of guidelines and rules and regulations, and those rules and regulations are called CC and Rs. So you'll hear that term a lot when you're talking to your realtor about make sure you check the CC and Rs.
So you want to talk about some of the rules and regulations we've come across? Like one of the ones I can think of right now, we're in an HOA, and we're talking about painting our house. And before we start painting, we have to have it approved by the HOA. Now this HOA, you basically just send them a color swatch before you start painting of what color you want to paint your house. Some, they already have a list of pre-approved colors that you can.
Which this HOA does, but they will still accept the ones that are outside the palette. They have 75 color schemes.
Yeah, and it's mostly beige.
Well, that's standard
sort of
Valley.
beige, light beige, dark beige. It's really all in that color scheme, which is a little frustrating. It's a desert, but when we lived in rental homes, the colors were all so similar that I sometimes could not find our house if it was in the middle of the street. Every time I came home, I had to look for like a landmark to say, oh yeah, that's our house right there. So
she longs for the Midwest still, as far as the color scheme
just when it comes to that. But you know, that's one of the things we're dealing with. You know, you can't park your car in the street overnight. We've pretty much seen that in most of the places.
That's pretty standard. So is the color scheme, actually. It's pretty standard. That was going to be the case in the new build as well. We had to have, remember, we had to pick from a predefined. We didn't even get to go outside that custom. We had to pick from predefined color schemes, predefined elevations for the home.
Oh yeah. We were gonna do a new build. I think we'll talk about that in another video. Sure. We ended up not doing it, but you know, long story. Some HOAs, they say you can't have fake grass in the front yard, but you can do in the backyard, or you have to have rock landscaping. So they basically tell you how to do your yards, you know, and basketball hoops. We were surprised that was included in the HOA. It's like you can either. Sometimes you can have permanent ones, sometimes you can't. We're limited to the pole color of what color the pole can be. It can get really
just black or silver
like
here.
Nitpicky. It's, you know, and the garbage cans, I think you have to have
time
them.
that you take them out,
yeah,
and the
when
time
you
that they
put them
have to
out.
be back.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. And it's kind of I personally, I'm not a big fan of HOAs. It's a love-hate relationship. I get it, because they don't want, you know, somebody painting a purple house and a sea of beige. I get it. They don't want you having your Sanford and Son trucks and cars, you know, that you're working on in front of the street for 3 years.
Can we just pause and take a recognition that she referenced Sanford and Son, a 70s show.
Okay, I'm old, so what? but you know, it's frustrating because you spend all this money on your house, and it's like, you're going to tell me every little thing that I can and can't do, and I have to have it approved. And after a while, it feels like it's not really your house. It almost feels like you're renting it. You know?
So, and to your point, though, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
The idea behind an HOA came about from protecting the investment for condos and townhomes. And then some people realized that, hey, this might be a good way for me to protect my property value. And exactly what she was saying. In fact, I giggle with the reference to Sanford and Son, because that's what you're trying to protect against. You don't want that neighbor that doesn't take care of their front yard and, you know, has 10 cars up on blocks sitting in the front yard or whatever, that will cause a hit to your property value, even though you may have the most pristine house, not just on the block, but in the entire hood. That will still affect that. So that's the idea is, hey, if we put some rules and regulations in that the neighbors agree upon, this is a good thing. What we're finding is that some HOAs are a little carried away. The other thing that you have to be aware of is HOAs cost money. And it can be monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. And it really just depends, and the rates are all over the board.
They are. A house that we rented, I think, their HOA, and when you rent a house, normally the landlord pays the HOA, but you get to use the amenities.
Yep.
So I think she was paying $75 a month.
Yep.
The new bill that we were going to do, it was $125 a month. Here we're paying probably less than $100 a month. So some of the ritzier places, I've seen HOA fees going $200, $300, $400 and something dollars a month.
You're paying for the maintenance. You're paying for them to govern themselves.
Right. So I think, you know, ours is cheaper because we don't have a community pool. You know, so every neighborhood around here typically has little parks around that you pay to maintain. There's a lot of green spaces in these areas, so you pay to have those maintained, watered, whatever it is that they need to do. So it's really the community upkeep that you're paying for. I don't know what they're paying for in the wealthier communities that they're paying $400 and something dollars.
Some of those wealthier communities are gated.
Yeah.
And they have
security.
Private security.
Yeah, that's right.
And private security is not cheap.
Going back, if you don't abide by the rules, they will let you know. I mean, you know, if you've got weeds in your yard, they're going to send you a letter that says, hey, you need to get those weeds taken care of or you're going to get a fine.
So let's talk about that.
Okay, and we had a letter about a car parked in front of our house that wasn't even our car.
Yeah, no. And that's the funny thing. And again, this varies with HOAs. I can tell you that our very first rental, the first time we were in Arizona together, I think I got 2 or 3 letters from the HOA saying my grass was too brown. In the summertime, I didn't have it watering enough. Now, you mentioned fines, and absolutely, every HOA has the right to fine you, and usually they document in their CC&Rs what you can be fined for, and sometimes they even put a price point on them telling you first, second offense. Something that not a lot of people are aware of is an HOA can actually take your property if you are delinquent on your HOA dues to a certain extent.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Like an HOA can take
your
house from you. You can pay your mortgage every single month, and you miss too many of those HOA payments, or those fines are racking up, and your house could be taken by the HOA. That's just wild to me. I mean, I know you should, if you buy a house in a neighborhood that has an HOA, yes, you should pay, you know, the monthly fees, but I've heard about some disputes and some stuff about trees, and people were getting fined, and they're like, I'm not paying this isn't fair, and they had their house taken. So be careful. Don't think that it's something to play with when you get into an HOA that you don't have to pay regularly or keep up with your payments.
Jumping back for a second, I just remembered from an article that I saw. The average HOA fees right now range from $50 to $1,000 per month.
Is that here or just everywhere?
No, that's in the valley.
Okay. Oh.
The other thing to know is that HOA fees are not static. I.e., I signed my deed and my loan or my mortgage, or if I paid cash, whatever, and then I sign my HOA and commit to the HOA. Just because we're paying X amount per year right now does not mean that they can't double it if they wanted to, and as long as the HOA approves it, it's supposed to be a representative of the neighbors of our community, and therefore we're stuck, and we have two choices at that point: eat it or sell.
We're not saying that HOAs are all bad or it's just a terrible thing. It's just our personal feelings on some of the things that we go through. But again, I know that it's there for a reason, but you can get an HOA that's pretty on your case about everything. Some HOAs are just all in your business, just for no reason. That's how I feel about it. And then you get some HOAs that are kind of lax. You know, they put the rules in place, but at the end of the day, you see people not following it, and nothing seems to happen. So you really aren't going to know what you're truly getting into until you get into it. But I would advise anyone who's signing up for a home in an HOA, read your papers, read the rules, know what it is, because they're not going to care that you didn't read what you signed up for when you're complaining about wanting to put something in your backyard that's taller than the fence, and they're saying, that's in the rules that you can't do it, you know, because sometimes you might want to put a slide, but if it's taller than the fence, most things, if you can see over the fence, they say you can't have it. We don't want the neighborhood seeing what's in your backyard.
And that's a good point. You really need to do your research when you're doing these things. The last number that I saw, and I want to say it was from 2012, there were 9,000 neighborhoods in Arizona that had HOAs. Half of the valley, as of 2012, had HOAs. And that's probably changed.
I guarantee there is not a new build going up that doesn't have an HOA. I pretty much guarantee it.
Right. So it's not just Arizona. You need to really do the research.
Yeah, but I will say I've lived in, this is my fourth state. This is the only state that has really been a thing, because I don't even remember that in Texas like that. But
Texas wasn't that popular.
Yeah, we didn't go house hunting, but we looked at a lot of houses to rent, and we never saw anything about an HOA. So this was all new to me.
Yes. I will say that so far we have been happy and undisturbed by the HOAs. Maybe minus the fact that we had to submit for the paint approval, but we knew that coming into it.
We've had worse. We've had much worse.
And I don't think that we have any complaints about this HOA, and we did do our due diligence. I had to read through their crazy 51-page document. HOAs, they can be good, and they are certainly intended to be good, but they can also run a little rampant, and some of them can be really strict.
Just know that when you come here, it's a high chance that you probably won't be able to avoid it, especially if you want a newer home.
Yeah, and like she said, every new builder that we looked at, because we went through the new builder love phase, me more so than her, every single one of them had an HOA, every single one, and we looked at least 3 dozen. Different builders.
So we've been all over the valley looking for houses, and I'm telling you, maybe 1 or 2 of the homes didn't have an HOA, and the rest did. So we didn't feel like there was really a true option.
And you should know that we didn't restrict initially to East Valley only. So we did check some other areas just to see what was going on around the valley. My experience from the West Valley, from what I saw, was all of the new builds were also HOA'd. We didn't look at any existing builds there. And that'll wrap up our HOA homeowners awareness. video. You know the drill. Subscribe, share, like, comments down below. Give us some of your wish lists or requests, and we'll see if we can address those as well. Take care.
Perfect.